Hi everyone, I'm Carol Carini from Bellevue Marketing, and today I'm talking again with John Farver from Farver Law Firm in Bellevue, Washington. John has 22 years of experience in the field of bankruptcy and is an expert in the industry. Now, John helps his clients tackle the confusing and sometimes daunting path through bankruptcy, and today he'll be explaining Chapter 13. Hi, John.
Hi, Carol.
John, we talked in the last video about Chapter 7, and that was for just a consumer bankruptcy, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so now explain the difference just briefly, and then explain Chapter 13 for us.
Okay, a Chapter 13 plan is normally called a wage earner's repayment plan, although small businesses can also file for a Chapter 13. And it is a stripped-down version of what you might have heard of as a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It's where a debtor dedicates a certain amount of money on a monthly basis to pay its creditors off over a specific amount of time. In a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, it is usually the amount left over from a debtor after he's paid all of his monthly costs, his or hers monthly cost of living. It is a minimum of 3 years long, and it's a maximum of 5 years long. So within those two time constraints, the plan that the debtor has proposed has to take care of the debts he intends to pay through the plan, as well as conform to what the statute requires. There are good reasons to file a Chapter 13, and there are not so good reasons to file a Chapter 13. One of the not so good reasons is that you couldn't pass the means test to file a Chapter 7. If you have too much income to file a Chapter 7, then you are forced to either not file bankruptcy or look to other options, and one of them is a Chapter 13. In a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, you automatically get to keep all of your property. It doesn't come into the equation unless your plan calls for selling some of your property to pay. But in general, what the debtor does is proposes a plan that takes into account all of his earned income and the way that income is spent. So the debtor will state his or her net income per month, and then is allowed to deduct from that net income whatever it costs for them to live at a normal basis. Basically, rent, food, automobile expenses. You're allowed to keep a small amount of your money for savings. You can also schedule in certain amounts for charity, etc., and for entertainment. But in general, once you've done all that, whatever is left in your net income on a monthly basis then is dedicated to paying off your creditors. So
it's really a payment plan, basically.
It is to some large degree, and whatever you can afford or the debtor can afford during that time period is all of it that his unsecured creditors are going to receive. And at the end of that period, if there's still debt owed, it gets discharged just as it does in a Chapter 7. Now, some of the good reasons for filing a Chapter 13 are to catch up on back house payments, to avoid a foreclosure, and force your mortgage company to give you an amount of time, considered a reasonable amount of time, to catch up on back payments that you had missed. In that type of Chapter 13 plan, your unsecured creditors will not get anything until your back house payments, or in some cases car payments, are caught up. No creditor can take any action against you while you're in a Chapter 13 to recover on a debt. They are obligated to accept the plan and the payments that are given to them in the plan. Once a debtor files a Chapter 13, another trustee in the bankruptcy court called a Chapter 13 trustee, which is actually, there is a specific Chapter 13 trustee, but it's actually a large office within the bankruptcy court that handles all of the payments from all of the Chapter 13 debtors. They take the money once your plan has been confirmed, and then they dole it out as required by the plan. And they are the monitors of the plan, and they did make sure that all the plan payments are made and that they go to where they're supposed to go.
So when we talked in Chapter 7, you had to be less than $53,000 for the year. So this is just over $53,000 no matter how much you earn in a year.
Yes, and we talked about $53,000 for a single debtor. It's higher for larger families or larger families. In the Chapter 13, yes, it doesn't matter how much you make. There are limits on how much you can owe, and they're changing all the time. But you can only owe, up to a limit of unsecured and up to a limit of secured debt. But yes, say you're making a substantial amount of money, well, that just makes your plan payment substantial because, as we said, once you've determined your cost of living, whatever's left over after that is paid into the Chapter 13 plan. And the Chapter 13 trustee and the U.S. trustee are there to make sure also that if you're making $1 million a year, that your plan payment has to reflect how much you're making and that your expenses are reasonable.
Do you think that, people who are earning a million or plus a year, and they have boats and they have holiday vacation homes and all of this sort of thing, and then all of a sudden they decide, well, we don't want to pay all of this anymore. Can people rot the system?
Well, it's pretty hard to do in a Chapter 13 because there's, as I talked about, the Chapter 13 trustee, and then there is the U.S. trustee. The U.S. trustee is another office within the bankruptcy system that is there to make sure people are treated fairly and are act fairly within their bankruptcy. Secured debts cannot be discharged in either Chapter 7 or 13. And secured debt is a debt that involves collateral. So your house is a secured debt, your car is a secured debt if you still owe money on it. And those entities are treated differently within and without a bankruptcy. If you don't make your house payment, then they can foreclose on your house, and take their security. Same with your car. In a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, if you have vacation homes and yachts and that kind of thing, the court gets to determine whether or not you're being reasonable or not, whether or not you're abusing the system. And there's a specific statute that prevents abuse of the bankruptcy system. But if you're making a large amount of money and you have reasonable expenses, such as house, car, and all that, well, once that's done, you're going to have more than likely a fairly large amount of money to put in your plan every month. So oftentimes, if you're making a lot of money, going into Chapter 13 to game the system, you end up making huge Chapter 13 payments, and so you won't have extra money to fly off to Mallorca or do whatever you want. And it's one of the reasons that as a good bankruptcy attorney for a consumer will try to keep them out of a 13, primarily because of that 3 to 5 year period, your debt to income ratio is 100%. You have absolutely no extra money except the extra money that you were able to put into your plan for savings, etc. during the month, and that can't be an unreasonable amount. So during that time, you won't qualify for any credit anywhere. Again, you have no money to make any payments outside of your plan, so you have no extra money to speak of. It's not totally onerous, but in general, if people find themselves in a very terrible financial situation, a Chapter 7 is the way to go. But as I say, if you want to keep your house, keep your car, and you're way behind on payments, a Chapter 13 sometimes can be the way to go.
Well, that's really good information, John. I know that, there's so much more to talk about, in Chapter 7 and Chapter 13, and, we're doing a series of videos here, so I'm sure that we're going to come back in another video in the future and talk a little bit more in detail about the different elements of those chapters. So I really appreciate you having you on today, and I'm looking forward to the next video, and I think that might be about the means test. Is that correct?
Yes, and probably we will, and we'll have further videos about the specifics and the procedures of filing a Chapter 13 and a 7. And also, if people who are seeing this video have questions that they want to ask, they can always get to me through my website and leave questions there, and we'll try and put those in the next videos and give answers to the people who have them.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Thank you very much. And everyone, if you would like to contact John, you can go to farverlaw.com. And if you want a free consultation, you can go to farverlaw.com/free or call him, and the phone number is on the screen now. So thanks, everyone, for joining me. Thank you, John, and we'll see you next time.
Okay. Thank you, Carol.